Jordan Westburg has a fractured hand. Let's talk about it on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5, and welcome to August. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and let's begin with Jordan Westburg. Awful news on Wednesday, diagnosed with a fractured hand after getting hit by a pitch, and you got a feel for Westburg, who's having a breakout season. Brandon Hyde said they're hoping Westburg could return before the end of the season, but he's without a clear timeline. I would say optimistically, Scott, maybe it's early to mid-September, but if you need the roster spot, if you play in a league without IL spots, I think Westburg is pretty close to a drop.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of the same situation we were facing with Ozzie Albies, and that was, a week or two ago, and we were already thinking, it's pretty much done. They haven't offered an official timetable, I guess, but I'm not hopeful. I'm not hopeful in Jordan Westburg making an impact the rest of the way. I'm just realizing I should have traded him to you in the podcast league because you were asking about him at the start of this week.
True.
But, you're just going to have to find an alternative. Unfortunately, if you were playing him at third base, that alternative will not be Coby Mayo, because even though that would seem like the major opening for the Orioles, okay, they can't possibly put off the Mayo call-up anymore. They did. They called up Levon Soto instead, who's whatever. Mm-hmm. Not anybody to be concerned about. So I imagine if they're not calling up Coby Mayo now, we're not going to see him until close to a month from now. And you're going to have to find another option in the meantime.
Yeah, I won't completely rule it out. I mean, they are struggling right now, the Orioles. Let's say they go through another week of, struggles and no production from third base. Maybe they change their mind, but I do think what you're saying is the most likely outcome is that they just wait until late August or even early September at this point for Coby Mayo. Let's talk some replacements for Jordan Westburg. We know that he has dual eligibility. We'll start with second base, and Jackson Holliday is back up with the Orioles, actually hit a grand slam in his return on Wednesday. He's 77% rostered. We have Xavier Edwards at 59%, Brandon Lau at 68%, and then Luis Garcia at 61%. How would you rank those second base replacements, Scott? Jackson Holliday, Edwards, Brandon Lau, and Luis Garcia.
I got to say, I'm surprised Brandon Lau is that available, given how good he's been since coming back from the IL. And when I say coming back from the IL, that was May 20th. I didn't provide the numbers on the full length podcast, so you're actually getting extra information here. Since May 20th, Brandon Lau's hitting 274 with a 923 OPS. Now, I imagine the playing time hasn't been so consistent, because that's the Rays way, right? But yeah, I think he's clearly number one on this list. Number two, I would say Holliday in most cases, particularly if it's a shallower league. You need impact production. Don't know how it's going to go with him. Obviously, the first game back, the grand slam, that was better than anything he did in his first stint. So a lot of upside. We're hopeful he makes good on it now. I'll put Holliday second in the priority. Then Xavier Edwards, who I just don't think measures up in terms of upside. He'll have to steal a lot of bases in order to, which he could, but it's a narrower path. And then Luis Garcia is fourth. Not that he's a terrible choice, but pretty obvious platoon concerns there. I'm following up on that for Lau, by the way, because obviously he's a left-handed hitter. It looks like it's been off and on playing against lefties. He doesn't sit against all of them, but he sits against some of them.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon Lau has actually been really good against lefties. I think he's even been better against lefties than righties this season. So he probably should play more against them, but he's on Tampa Bay, and this is what they like to do. What about if you're using Jordan Westburg at third base? Some replacements at that position. We have Mark Vientos at 75% rostered, Michael Busch at 72%, Jake Berger at 54%, and Eugenio Suarez at 44%. Scott, how would you rank that group of third basemen?
Well, I'm going to go Vientos number one. I'm pretty happy with what he's been doing for the Mets this year. Seems to be having a breakout season with a reduced strikeout rate, big-time power. Number 2, I know Michael Busch is pretty hot, but I might give the edge to Eugenio Suarez just because he's been crazy hot in July. Let me give you those numbers. 333 with 10 home runs just this month.
Yep.
Or last month, I guess I should say, because it's August 1st. So yeah, Vientos 1, Suarez 2, Busch 3, Berger 4.
And in deeper leagues, some of those 15-teamers, some names that could be out there, Gavin Lux, Miguel Vargas, and Ahmed Rosario. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Odyssey app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.